automatically assume when a spouse is killed, the other spouse is guilty. Love makes the world go round, but money greases the wheels.
There's no sign of Ron Rudin.
And he was gone.
Margaret Rudin, dubbed the Black Widow of Las Vegas.
The Nevada Black Widow.
They never checked on anyone but me.
If you spot Margaret Rudin, call our hotline of 1-800-CRIME-TV.
She had at least 2, if not 3 wigs. And then we came across several IDs.
She went on the lam. She outsmarted all of them.
I mean, how often could you be that lucky?
Margaret just doesn't know that luck is going to run out.
42 years, that is the worst trial that I've ever had.
You were wrong doing that. It's unfair to Mrs. Rudin, Judge. Listen to me.
They had no evidence. They had no witnesses.
There's no fingerprints, DNA, no forensics.
It was a circus.
My right side, whole body would have to go this way. I made a ruling and it sticks.
This was just a travesty of justice, and I was part of that travesty. And it's the biggest regret of my life. It really is.
Sometimes what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and sometimes it goes on the run.
Why would you flee if you were innocent?
Guadalajara is a city in western Mexico known for its tequila and its mariachi music. Its historic center is dotted with plazas and beautiful landmarks. In 1997, a middle-aged woman in a dark wig was seen frequenting the old Colonial Plaza. That woman was none other than Margaret Rudin.
Margaret Rudin had been indicted for murder. Her husband, Ron Rudin's skull was found just outside of Las Vegas in 1994.
Police instantly zero in on Margaret. They believe they've got a solid case. But it's only after police finally have what they believe to be is the murder weapon are they able to charge Margaret Rudin with murder.
Everything that had gone wrong, the way it was handled by the police and the prosecutors, and I got really scared. I did not feel comfortable anymore because they can do whatever they want to do with somebody's life. I wasn't going to get a chance to prove myself.
She did call me and say they think that I did it. She always said she did not do it. She never admitted that I know of that she was guilty, and she ran.
When Margaret fled, it cemented public opinion, right? People thought she was guilty, right? Why would you flee if you were innocent?
I left for, I thought, a better life than what I had in Vegas. I wanted peace of mind. Mexico, they don't care where you're from. They don't pay attention to you.
Once Margaret ends up in Guadalajara, she finds an apartment in a building with mostly other Americans, and she sort of works into the fabric of the downtown atmosphere of this Mexican city.
I love Mexico. I like their way of life. Nobody knew me. And I thought, this is a good place to live.
Meanwhile, back in the U.S., Margaret may have been gone, but she was not forgotten. She was on the FBI's most wanted list.
This is going to be a true test for Margaret Rudin. 53 years old, no criminal record. She has to figure out how to survive life on the run.
I don't know how she did it. I really don't.
Well, one would think she had help, or that she had studied it very, very closely.
One useful tool that Margaret has always possessed is her charm. Men do like her. So what happens next is practically the making of a movie of the week. She meets a guy who claims to be a Spanish bank robber, also on the run.
Oh, it was great. He was a wonderful companion. He was not my boyfriend. He taught me how to be a fugitive. The number one thing is always have a bag packed. Have money, ID, clothes. Make sure you have whatever it is you need the most in that bag.
Margaret becomes this master of disguise, with different aliases, wearing different wigs. She even had colored contacts. But eventually, she decided she was ready to come back to the U.S.
Life on the run's not what it's cracked up to be, right? It's a tough existence. You want to live in Mexico under an alias, scrapping it out, or will you take your chances coming back to the United States?
I had friends that came to visit me in Mexico, and then they asked me if I wanted to come back and live with them in Phoenix. Once you have children and grandchildren, you cannot go somewhere else and live and act like you're having a normal life.
Margaret has to figure out a way to safely get back into the United States. So once again, she uses her charm and convinces a gentleman who lives in the same apartment building in Guadalajara to help her.
Joe Lundergan was a Boston fireman, retired. Very, very, very needy. He was never my boyfriend. I have never been that desperate in my life. I said, I've decided I'm going back to the States. And he said, I will get you across the border. We got to the border where you're on U.S. territory and you're not gonna slip them $100 and they're gonna let you walk across. And Joe said, just a minute. He pulls out his Boston fireman retired card. And you know how police are a fraternity? Firemen are included in their fraternity. And the guy said, oh, okay, go. You can both go.
Margaret and Joe Lundergan part ways. He heads back home to the Boston area, and she settles into a new life in Phoenix, assuming yet another identity using the name of her friend.
Margaret is in Phoenix. She's gotten herself a room at the YMCA. She once worked in the hotel business. So that's a bit of a resume, and she uses it to get a job at the San Carlos Hotel.
My poor manager, he used to say, if you ever tell me you're gonna quit, I'll kill you. And I knew I was gonna have to quit at some point.
Margaret was the subject of as high-profile a case as you'll ever get.
What could drive a woman to murder? Love, sex, money? Well, for the woman in our next case, you're going to have to answer that question yourself.
And she was repeatedly on America's Most Wanted. And she was the Black Widow, right? This was the label. Where's the Black Widow? Have you seen Margaret Rudin?
If you spot Margaret Rudin, call our hotline of 1-800-CRIME-TV.
Someone that she worked with saw the America's Most Wanted and said, hey, that's Annette, and she called the tip line and the police officers responded.
So the cops showed up at my door and said, somebody thinks you are so-and-so and we need to see your ID. And I had gone the day before and got legit Arizona ID with my picture on it, you know. And they said, let me check it in the computer. Came back and said, nothing there. So they left. I picked up my bag, called a limo service, which we used at the hotel, and I said, would you please pick me up on the side entrance? So the limo took me to where I wanted to go, and I was a fugitive again. It is funny. I mean, how often could you be that lucky?
It's time for another chapter in Margaret's life on the run, and she heads east.
But then a pizza delivery man shows up at Margaret Rudin's door. Is he there to deliver an end to her lucky streak?
Revere, Massachusetts is a community that's just 6 miles north of Boston.
It's a blue-collar community, very diverse, and with USA's oldest beach is Revere Beach.
This area was kind of known as the Boston mob community, but this is where they operated in that general vicinity.
No one asked many questions in Revere.
Margaret barely makes it out of Phoenix when she hears from a friend that Joe Lundergan needs her help.
And Joe said, I have 2 knee surgeries and hip surgery. And would you ask Margaret if she would come take care of me?
Margaret is able to, in Revere, carve out a new life on the run.
Margaret lived in a kind of a rundown little apartment. You had to walk up 2 or 3 flights of stairs. It was kind of grimy and dirty and dark. It was so different than her life of luxury in Las Vegas.
Her new name is Lee Brown.
The other one was Susan Simmons, and she had at least 2, if not 3 wigs. And she wore them frequently.
You know, it wasn't to be deceptive in any way, it's just my sense of style.
People of Revere, they all liked Margaret, right? She was real popular.
I first met Margaret back in October of '99. I'd do photocopies for her. Then she would bring me in some IDs, and I would laminate them for her. And she was very pleasant, really nice.
I really like Massachusetts. I like the people. They're very honest and sincere and forthright.
Even on the run, for Margaret, there's always time for romance. Turns out Margaret's got a new boyfriend. He's a younger guy who lives in the same building as Margaret, but 1 floor down.
The idea that she is the focus of an international woman hunt.
You spot Margaret Rudin, call our hotline of 1-800-CRIME-TV.
But then also live a somewhat normal life is uncanny.
But when you're on the lam, it's the little things that get you. One of Margaret's seemingly mundane activities proves to be her undoing. She goes frequently to the Revere post office.
And they got a tip, hey, this woman looks like the fugitive that's being broadcast on America's Most Wanted.
They got a tip that Margaret Rudin was in fact mailing packages from a Revere post office. So we immediately went over to the post office and showed her a picture. Post office people says, yeah, that's her, and she lives right over there.
And that's how they found me.
November 5th, 1999. The team got together and decided to position ourselves around here.
They came up with kind of a unique sting operation to pry her out, which was a law enforcement officer posed as a pizza delivery man.
We had Officer Joe Peppert on a Domino's shirt, a Domino's hat. We all went up the stairs, gained peaceful entry, filed up the stairs to her apartment, which is in the 2nd floor, and proceeded to knock on the door.
When they said, "Pizza man," and I went to Joe's bedroom and I said, "Answer the door."
And as soon as the door opened, we rushed in, and the first person I came to was Mr. Lundgren. I pat him down really quickly, shifted him, and passed him to the next guy.
They came in like gangbusters. They're coming down this narrow hallway, and they're coming in with their guns drawn.
There's a entrance to a bathroom. We open the door, and we see a female in there.
All I did was step back into the door of the bathroom. And immediately, he was a highway patrolman. He was a wonderful young man. He came in, and he said, "Are you Margaret Rudin?" I said, "Of course I am. You know I am."
I said to her, "You know what this is about, Margaret?" She goes, "Yeah, this is about Las Vegas." At that point, she was placed in handcuffs with no issues whatsoever. This would be a good example of how she looked upon her arrest. And then she had all her things scattered all over the room, to include wigs. And then we came across several IDs. She took deliberate, proactive measures to conceal her identity.
People of Revere were absolutely stunned beyond belief when it came out that she was wanted for murder in Las Vegas.
This doesn't jive with the person that I knew. The pleasantness of her, that's not something that you could hide. I don't know, I tend to have my doubts.
Margaret Rudin's run from the law ended in Revere. Indicted more than 2 years ago for the 1994 murder of her husband, Las Vegas realtor Ron Rudin.
Now that she's caught, she's the focus of everybody's attention.
Margaret Rudin's fugitive days were over, but not her efforts to escape justice.
And they're bringing her from Massachusetts back to Las Vegas.
It sells papers. It keeps the hoopla going.
This is what Margaret Rudin looked like when corrections officers booked her Sunday morning.
They convict somebody before they're ever setting foot into a courtroom.
And now all this anticipation is building as day one in the courtroom is on the horizon.
You would be relieved, you know, to find out if in fact she really did it, and we would find out in court, and we could see it whenever we wanted to.
There's a lot here at stake. Margaret's life is at stake.
But would Margaret's fate hinge on the testimony of a surprising witness for the prosecution, her own sister?
What did Margaret respond?
She said, "I don't give a."
When you think of Las Vegas, you think of all that sizzle on the Strip. Now it's all moved to the Clark County Courthouse, where Margaret Rudin is about to face trial for murder.
March 2nd, 2001, it is time for the Rudin trial.
Adding to the drama inside the courtroom, this trial would make its way into living rooms across America. It was put on cable television.
Good morning and welcome to Open Court here on Court TV.
I think this was the first trial to go gavel to gavel on Court TV.
State of Nevada versus Margaret Rudin.
The world is watching as this woman who has been on the run, accused of murder, is now sitting in the defendant's chair.
I did not know the magnitude until trial started.
There's a lot riding on the case, and I remember really feeling the weight of that case.
I've never talked about the Margaret Rudin case.
Is state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
They hand me the file, and he says, this is going to be a tough one.
Mr. Owens.
In opening statements, the prosecution portrays Margaret to the jury as a ruthless, greedy woman who will do anything to get her husband's millions.
The evidence will show at the time of Ronald Rudin's death, Margaret Rudin was a 60% beneficiary of that properties and assets that were in that trust.
And in comes Michael Amador.
All right, Mr. Amador.
In his opening statement, defense attorney Michael Amador raises a lot of eyebrows when he seems more intent on talking about himself rather than his client.
I could be a wonderful, caring father, coaching soccer and basketball and helping kids with homework and doing all those things.
It was hours of rambling and talking about himself.
This is a great day for me. This is a culmination of a career.
The purpose of an opening statement is just to indicate what the evidence is going to tend to show and not go into your personal beliefs and your passion and your soccer dad. I never heard that in an opening statement in my life.
I remember minutes into the opening statement of the defense saying to my co-counsel, "Hey, give me a cigarette, this thing's over." And I don't smoke.
Things started out bad and they went to worse by the first day.
Prosecutors lay out their case that Margaret shot Ron to death in their house. And experts testify that they found traces of Ron's blood spatter in the bedroom.
The spatter that you saw in this case that you described was consistent with what you've seen previously as well with regard to gunshot wounds and high-velocity spray.
Yes, it is.
The conclusions that were being drawn that because there was the blood, therefore this had to be the place. But the place for what?
What type of a scene was this?
Suicide.
And could you tell the jury where that was?
In the bedroom.
In the middle of the trial, this astounding revelation comes to light when the jurors learned that Ron Rudin's third wife, Peggy, had actually shot herself in the head in that very bedroom.
We found blood evidence of blood spatter. Well, that was contaminated by the suicide of Peggy Rudin.
That really cut a different way than they wanted to.
As for the murder weapon, the prosecution links the gun that was found at Lake Mead to Margaret, saying Ron had reported to the ATF that the gun went missing from his collection back in 1988, right at the time that Margaret was moving out of the house.
A year into the marriage when they were having the divorce problems.
That gun had turned up missing about the time that he and Margaret had separated, and he believed that she had taken the gun.
If she somehow is so clever that she's kept this gun under lock and key such that no one knows where it is, she brings it out right to the place where it could be found. And that's what you have to believe beyond a reasonable doubt.
One of the major pieces that the state honed in on was a trunk. They claimed that Margaret had stuff
conviction.
It turns out that the guy who originally sold the witness that trunk came forward after watching him testify on court TV.
The person says, hey man, I did not sell that trunk to him. I sold him something else.
Yes, I remember a small case like we carry roller skates in. He said, that's it. And I said, Bruce, that little case is too small to put a cadaver in.
But the jury didn't hear from that man until after the defense had rested. Mullinex contends by that time what he had to say was ineffective.
We didn't know it at the time. That's where the problems were. We were finding facts out as they were coming, and as an attorney, you know the facts, and you're able to defend against them. Quite truthfully, if we had that testimony at Vint, they never would have spent all the time talking about trunks.
And so there's a lot of issues about this trunk tying it to Margaret, but they need this trunk to tie to Margaret because they found Ron's body there.
Mullinex says there are a lot of mysteries surrounding Ron's murder that remain unanswered a quarter of a century later, including